This will be the last part and last section of the Eternity Dragonknight tech build, going over skills and playstyle of the build. Okay. So basically what we're doing here, I'm going to be going over all of the skills, passives, and absolutely everything that I use for the build and for tanking. Going all the way down, starting from the top. So without further ado, here we go. Here we are in Ardent Flame. First, there are two skills that we need here in this tree. They are Engulfing Flames and Unrelenting Grip. Fiery Breath morphed into Engulfing. Noxious is not necessary. You're gonna get Fracture from your taunt. Not necessary. Engulfing is extra flame damage for your group. Meaning, affected enemies take 7% more flame damage from all fire damage sources. That is, all fire damage attacks from your group. So if your group has a majority Magicka, you should be running Engulfing, because those Magicka should be using flame damage. Flame staffs, flame deshield, things like that. This is a huge group buff if you are running Magicka in the group. For the chains, empowering change is not worth it. Grants empower, increasing the damage of your light attack. And your light attack's gonna be like less than 1,000. Not worth it at all. Unrelenting Grip, however, refunds magic if the target cannot be pulled. Well worth it. Here, if you are running Engulfing, you're gonna want all of these passives and the Ardent Flame tree. But if you look again, if you are not running Engulfing, there's not really a need for some of these passives, like World in Ruin, Area of Effect, not necessary. Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, or Dragonknight Standard, not necessary. Direct damage that applies to chains, which you would need that. Warmth. Combustion, not really needed either. But, to be honest, it can be procced on burning from the chains, so I guess it is a bonus, but not absolutely necessary in my opinion. Next, Draconic Power. Skill line. There are times where you are going to want to run Spiked Armor, and the morph I choose is Hardened. I prefer the damage shield opposed to the damage over time. Extra shield is helpful in content. Next thing, you need Talons. Choking Talons without a doubt. Burning Talons does additional flame damage, so that's 2500 over 4 seconds. Not worth it compared to the minor maim of everything that you grab. In less serious content, choking is by far better. That's talking like dungeons, ad pools, things like that. Next, Dragon Blood. Dragon Blood is pretty much our burst heal. Coagulating Blood heals off of Magicka and spell damage. As a tank, you're not gonna have that high spell damage or Magicka. It's a really bad heal. Then Green Dragon Blood gives you minor vitality and major endurance. Endurance you're gonna have from potions, but vitality is a bonus for you. On top of healing for 37% of your max health, 37% of 40k, big number, good heal. You're going to want every single one of these passives. For the Earthen Heart Tree, there are some times where you will pop Magma just because you feel unsafe or you're unsure of yourself. Corrosive is a damage morph, deals poison damage, ignore physical resistance, not necessary on a tank. However, a powerful damage shield is pretty darn great. Nearby allies gain a damage shield for 110% of their max health for 10 seconds. Huge damage shield, especially if you use it next to another tank. Really helpful. Here, there's only one skill that you're gonna need, absolutely. This is the meat and potatoes of the entire build. Mentality, everything. This is the life essence. This is the blood. Igneous shield. Shield strength of yourself is like almost an 8k damage shield on cast. I mean, if you're casting that with every 2 seconds, that is huge mitigation. Large amount of shield and a lot of damage that you are not taking. On top of that, it gives you major mending for 3 seconds. And I'll touch on how to use Igneous and so forth and after we cover skills. But just know Igneous by far. The other more fragmented increases duration of major mending. 3 seconds is more than enough compared to the extra shield strength on yourself. So it more than doubles the shield strength for yourself. By far, Igneous. I'm going to go ahead and touch back on Draconic Power. Some tanks and some people will use Inhale. And some newer players are going to want to use Inhale. This is healing for 115% of the damage caused. Not really going to be good for you. It's not that big a heal, and it's pretty costly in comparison to a Dragon's Blood, which is going to be a much bigger heal and cost relatively the same. But the reason behind Inhale is this morph interrupts. First hit interrupts enemies that are casting. In some content such as VMAL or even VHOF on Pinnacle Factotum, you're going to have to interrupt quite a lot. And Deep Breath is an interrupt that you can hit with that costs Magicka, and it's at ranged. So if you're bad at getting the bashes, this is something some tanks will do. Not necessary. But again, I'm just going to throw it out there. Some people use it, it's up to you. I don't. Another thing that some people will use is this Ash Cloud under Earthenheart. And they're going to pick the Cinderstorm morph. Heals. Healing you and your allies for 959 every 1 second. That is a pretty good hot. That lasts 18 seconds it is. 18 seconds. A 1k hot every second. As well as reducing enemy movement speed. Pretty decent. Pretty decent heal, but it is costly 4.5. Okay, Magicka when it could be used for another Igneous, which is, again, an 8k damage shield. Opposed to this 1k hot. Let your healers focus on the heals for the most part. Cinderstorm is an extra heal that you can put on, but I don't think it's necessary compared to other heals that you can put on. But the benefit behind that too is you're gonna get the Helping Hand passive and the heal at the same time, which is another part of the logic behind it. But again, I don't really use the skill, it's not necessary. A damage morph, not necessary either. You're not trying to do damage. That covers the class skills. Next on the weapons, you're going to want, under Sword on Board, this is Ransack. Pierce Armor can be helpful when you have an all Magicka group, but even then, the Magicka can get major breach from LE Drain that's applied by healers, which your healers should be running if you have Magicka in the group. But in every other scenario, Ransack is far better. It will provide you as a DK minor resolve, which is increase your physical resistance. Pretty helpful. It's more helpful to you opposed to just providing major breach. when there are other sources of major breach, as opposed to you getting minor resolve, which is really hard for you to do. Ransack. Next thing you'll need is this skill right here. Low slash morphed into heroic slash. Minor heroism. Minor heroism is going to be massive, massive, massive help to everyone. Not only does it apply minor maim, reducing the damage by 15% on whatever you hit, but it gives you one ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds, which is a huge return. You're going to be popping ultimates quite often if you keep your heroism up, on top of having a decisive front bar, like we covered in gear and sets. Heroic, by far. Deep slash, not necessary. When you are using heroic, you're going to want to use it on one thing, and the heroism does not stack. And with this morph, you don't even get heroism. You're just applying minor maim to everything that you hit. Not necessary when compared to minor heroism. Heroic slash by far. Next thing you'll need, defensive posture morphed into absorb magic. Reflection, not necessary in absolutely any content. Maybe PvP, but we're not talking PvP. This is a PvE build. Absorb magic, absorb spells and heal yourself. Pretty helpful in some content, such as off-tanking Fire Boss in VSS, off-tanking Yolnokrin when there's a bunch of Flame Atronachs throwing fireballs at you. Absorb magic is a clutch heal. But we're not really using this ability for the actual heal or the absorption part of it. We want the passive ability, which is increase the amount of damage you can block by 8% and reduce the cost of blocking by 8% as well. This is huge mitigation just for having slotted. Never need to use the skill even, but it is well worth running just for the mitigation. You're going to want all of these passives for your sword and board. No argument there. For your back bar, there are some people that will run dual wield, bow, distro, and even resto staffs in some content. If you're running dual wield, you're going to want dots like twin slashes or even flurry, just to apply your weapon enchant, such as Crusher. If you watch the gear and sets type thing, you'll see when I went over with the back bar weapon. So again, dual wield, I prefer flurry. Bow should be using volley. Destruction staff, you're using wall of elements for off balance. Only using a lightning staff, by the way. Like a destruction staff is only worth it if you're running wall of elements and you're running a lightning staff. Increases what is it? Where is the passive? Concussion. Using a lightning gives concussion, which is off balance, increasing damage taken by 8%. Shield is minor maim, burning is just a dot over time. Concussion will help the group, shield helps as minor maim, but you can just use heroic slash or other sources of minor maim. Not necessary to use a frost staff. On the back bar, you shouldn't be blocking many things, you should just be using it for your buffs and heals. If you are using a staff, it should be a lightning staff. Next, for armor, we're going to go ahead and take all of the 1 armor passives for light and medium armors. You don't really need the sneak one, but I get it anyways just because it is a bonus. Why not? But you're getting that because sometimes you will be wearing 1 light piece, sometimes you'll be wearing 1 medium piece, sometimes you might be wearing 2 light pieces, sometimes you might be wearing 2 medium pieces. but all the time you must be wearing 5 heavy. Need all of these passives. Armor skills, not good this patch. But again, there are times if you again watch sets and traits. If you watch the previous video and previous section, then you'll understand why we have these passives. Underworld, the only thing we need here is the passives from being a vampire, which is supernatural recovery for mag and stam recovery. We're not looking for the stamina recovery, we're looking for the magic. Magic recovery is the life essence of this build. Next, Undeath. Whenever you are 3 or higher, reduce the damage taken by up to 33%. Huge mitigation on top of everything that you are already mitigating. This is a huge mitigation. Really good to have. This is just health recovery. Health recovery is near negligible when you're a vampire. For Fighters Guild, as a DK, we do not need Silver Leash, so that's not necessary. But you will want Circle of Protection for some scenarios. And you can use either morph of this, really. But lately I've been using Turn Undead just for the extra duration. The Fearing Undead Daedra Werewolf, not really applicable in anything. Just the extra 4 seconds is better compared to reducing the cost of roll dodging. You're not really going to roll dodge if you're having a circle down. If you have a circle down, you want to stack in the circle in order to receive the protection. But again, either morph as it's not really a make or break scenario, but I'm choosing Turn Undead. Passive wise, in Fighters Guild, you want these 3. Generate 9 ultimate when you kill Undead Daedra Werewolf. This is just going to be extra ultimate for you. Some content, no reason not to have it. Then Slayer, that will be helpful, just barely, but it's near negligible. And will only be active if you have Circle down. Circle on your bar, I'm sorry. If you have Circle on your bar, then you will get the Slayer passive. But most of the time you're not going to have Circle on your bar, and it's very situational. Not really necessary having these 3. Nothing mages, nothing thieves, and undaunted. We're going to use everything here. Every skill here has some type of utility, and pretty much it can be used in some content throughout the game. Blood Altar. Both morphs have capability and are quite viable. Some will say Sanguine, some will say Overflowing. But I choose Overflowing because the synergy heals for more. Like when I use an altar synergy, I'm looking for a massive heal. 71% of your max health when using the altar. Really good when you are health debuffed or when you're panicking. And near death, altar is gonna save you. If it's up, that is. Sanguine, however you say it. Duration of 40 seconds compared to 33 seconds, that's a noticeable difference. And more than half the cost. Really great. Lifesteal and 46% compared to 71. I will take Overflowing. For spiders, we're using Shadow Silk because when you use synergy and a ranged ally uses it, you can actually get pretty decent extra damage when used properly. This is a good damage booster if you know how to use it. Next is our range taunt. This will always be on your bar as well. And for this, you can take either morph. Either morph will help you. The whole essence of it is just to be a range taunt and to grab things you can't poke immediately. Either morph works. I will be picking Inner Beast. there will be rarely any a time that I will not have stamina to taunt. And if I am out of stamina, then there is something wrong. Next thing, Bone Shield. Really helpful to the group and whoever uses the Bone Surge. Spinal Surge gives a shield and gives them Major Vitality for 6 seconds. Major Vitality is what we're looking for, increasing healing received by 30%. That is huge extra healing. Again, in healing debuff situations and damage heavy things, this makes healing so much easier and is really, really good to run. Orbs. This is like a group utility. Tanks will have to be... let me rephrase that. You don't have to be shooting out orbs. Well, this is something you can put on just to help the group sustain. And give yourself a tiny little heal over time to whoever gets hit by the orb. The damage is 522 every 1 second, near negligible, compared to 510 every half second, which equates to almost over a 1k heal every second. Much better than the damage morph. Then in Alliance War, this is the main ultimate that we'll be using. This is the only ultimate that you should be using unless you are in a panic scenario. This is Aggressive Horn. Aggressive Horn for Major Force. Major Force is increasing critical damage by 15%. For 8 seconds, this is 8 seconds of super burn and crit damage for your entire group. This is huge. If you coordinate your horns, you can have much higher group DPS. Then next skills we'll be using Rapids. Rapids can be useful in some scenarios, and it's really a situational thing. Next thing, Vigor. Vigor, you can take either morph, but Echoing is going to be more support to your group and has a larger radius. You're going to hit more people, more heals overall. This is over a 1k heal over 5 seconds, like every second over 1k. Really nice heal. Passives, you don't need these passives, these are only active in PvP. For the support skill line, Barrier, just is near negligible which one you pick, but either, like, you shouldn't be using this ultimate if you have it slotted. If you do have it slotted, you are only using it for the Magicka Aid passive, which we'll get to in a second. But out of morphs, you have either Reviving or Replenishing. It is better to get the returned ultimate and Magicka opposed to the 15k over 30 seconds, which is a tiny heal by comparison. Replenishing by far. Then there is some content where you will want to have Purge to cleanse negative effects. Morph is a efficient Purge by far. It is a huge Magicka cost, 5.2, and that's with the reduced cost. Without the reduced cost, it's almost 8k. That is huge. If they are cleansed, target healed by 17% for 18k Magicka. For 8k Magicka. That is quite the cost for such a low heal. Better to run the cost reduction. For the next skill, Guard, we're going to be using Stalwart Guard, meaning Minor Force. Minor Vitality you're already going to have from having Dragon's Blood. Not really necessary to have this morph, unless you're guarding a DPS that you want to give Minor Vitality, in which scenario giving them Minor Force is going to be more beneficial, because it'll increase their overall damage. Because you're already going to take 30% of the damage that you are guarding them for. You don't need to help them more that scenario by giving them extra healing. Stalwart is better, in my opinion. Or either more fast applications. You do want Magicka Aid passive, and you're gonna want both ranks of this, by the way. I don't have it on this character. But it'll be 10% Magicka recovery for having a support ability slotted. So if you have replenishing, purge, or guard slotted, you're gonna get 10% per ability. So if I were to have stalwart, guard, efficient, purge, and barrier, I would have a total of 30% extra magic recovery just for having the second rank of this. If I equipped all three of them now, it would only be 15%. Still very helpful passive to have. For race-wise, I would rank them as Imperial, Nord, Argonian, and then everything else after that. I say Imperial because philosophy of the build, which we'll get to later, is max stats, cost reduction, as well as magic recovery. Here, Red Diamond, 3% cost reduction to everything. This is huge, because when you look at it, what is this? Magma Shell costs 194 ultimate, compared to 200. Warhorn is going to cost, 240 ultimate instead of 250. And that 3% is going to apply to all the skills that you have. On top of the direct damage, heal, and magicka and stam return. Every 5 seconds, it's a good little return. Next thing, you won't need any of the crafting passives except for the one in alchemy, which is medicinal use. This is to get the full effect and results of our potions whenever we use them. So, that's about it. That's going to cover all the skills and passives that we use in this build. Next, we're going to go over just a few details on character. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be going over is a few minute details that go into the build. This being things like active effects and things like that. We will always be running the Atronach. Always, always, always. There isn't really a better Mundus stone for this build ever. Next we are a Vampire. Vampire Pros, which is the recovery and the undeath when you are above 3, are much better than the cons, which is extra fire damage in comparison. For potions, we're going to be using tripods all the time. Tripods for absolutely everything. This is Bugloss, Columbine, and Mountain Flower. This is Return, Health, Mag, and Stam on potion, as well as giving you Intellect, Endurance, and Fortitude, increasing your recoveries. Use pots on cooldown, so you have a decent and big uptime on your Major Intellect. Sorry about that. Major Intellect, which is going to play a big part in the build theory. The food we're using, we're going to be using Tri-Stat food. You can use this or the other one that's craftable. But either way, just use the Tri-Stat food. Tri-Stat by far. There isn't really anything that comes close to it right now. I have Bloody Mara for when my vampirism is too high. You can use this, decrease your vamp level, bring it down if you need to. That depends on the content you're running, and that's up to you to decide. That is a more specific type of thing. But again, tri-stat food always. Like if you pop a Bloody Mara, reactivate your tri-stat right after. That's pretty simple. Next thing that we're going to go over is just mentality. Like, the way this build is played, again, I've probably said it a few times already, we're going to focus on blocking absolutely everything. Meaning when you are actively tanking, you can block every single hit, every single dot, everything. You do not need to let go of L2 unless you need to move. If you need to move somewhere, you can let go of L2 and move. But best believe you can block everything and hold block and sustain yourself through it. Basically how this is going to work is you're going to be spamming Igneous while you're blocking, while you're tanking. You're going to be using Igneous. On top of this, if you have Intellect from your potion, you're going to have so much return. Every attack you block is going to cost you stam, and your stam will not regen at all while you're holding block. But if you use an Earthen Heart ability, like we covered with Helping Hands, Helping Hands is going to return to you 1k stam every time you hit an Igneous. 1k, 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 1k. And if you notice, our stam pool is going to drop, our magicka pool is going to drop. But every time you have magicka, you can just trade it for stam. And an 8k damage shield at that. And it's pretty simple. Like literally you're just gonna sit there, taunt, debuff, and use Igneous. If your magicka bar is above 50%, you should be using Igneous. Igneous, give yourself the shield, give your team the shield, and return your stam. Just tanking these two spiders, you can see I can keep my stamina pool all the way high, and I'm not even going to use a potion. Not using a potion, not using an ultimate, nothing like that. And I haven't let go of block. Of course, this is just like a sample. The effects will be multiplied depending on the amount of things you gotta block and the damage you're taking. But this is the basics of the build. You're gonna hold L2 and spam Igneous. Pretty simple. Next thing to keep in mind when you are actually taking damage, you'll see it in a second. Or actually, hold on. Let's kill these real quick. My gosh, it sucks being a tank. So, let's take a look at some few details here. Okay, make sure this is not active. Okay. So, if you look at tooltips right now, Green Dragon Blood is going to heal for 37%. And Echoing Vigor is going to heal for 6,810. That's our tooltips. But, if you press Igneous, then look at your tooltips, you're not going to see an effect here, because it's a static heal, meaning it's based off your health. But if you Igneous, then look at your Vigor tooltip, you're going to see it shot up to 7,000 over 5 seconds. So look at it one more time. After Major Mending goes away, what is this? Okay, try this again. Oh. There it is, 8.5 opposed to 7,000. That's a whole 1.5 more health more healing, sorry, 1.5k more healing on your tooltip if you activate it after major mending. Every time you hit Igneous, you get major mending. Take advantage of this. Take advantage of having major mending. There's a lot of tanks that are going to just sit there, hold block, swap, use vigor, then go back. You're losing out on that 1.5k healing because you do not have major mending. But if you're holding block and you're tanking, then you hit Igneous, swap, vigor, you're gonna get that 8.5 opposed to the regular 7k. If you understand what I'm saying. And that's gonna be like the basics of the build. Like, one thing I will also note, like when you are actively tanking, give me one more second, I'll show you for a bit. So if you look here we are actively tanking a few ads. And we're gonna be doing just the same thing we were with the spiders just a moment ago, just hitting Igneous, shielding. If you look just on the sheer number of ads, my pools are not as well. My stand pool is draining faster than I can keep up. So in order to help that out, we're going to use a potion. Well, there are some things you need to know when it comes to this. Like, I use potions on cooldown solely because of the magic recovery that it gives. If you have the passive Major Intellect from the potion, you're going to be recovering magicka at a much faster rate the whole time, and your stand pool is going to go down at a lower rate. And if you have the medicinal use passive, your potion is going to come up relatively quickly. There are some people that are going to say you shouldn't pop it on cooldown, you should use it when you're low on resources. But the counter argument to that is you're not getting the Major Intellect that you need. If you didn't know already, Major Intellect is 20% more magicka recovery, which is the basics of this build. With Major Intellect, take a look at the stat sheet right now. Major Intellect, our recovery is at 1750. Now wait until my potion runs out and you'll see how much drastically the magicka recovery is without Major Intellect. Give it just a moment. Oh, the tank life. Isn't it great? Okay, no Major Intellect. Let's look. Our magic recovery dropped to below 1500. So that's a whole 250 magic recovery that we are missing out on because we do not have a potion active. But if you have a potion active, you're basically gaining 250 more magicka per tick all the time, opposed to just when you pop a potion. If you keep your potion active at all times, you will always have that Major Intellect and you'll be much better off. And contrapositive to that, one thing that is kind of frowned upon is using non-support ultimate. Like, there are some scenarios, don't get me wrong, where it will be better to use a magma shell over a warhorn because you're hurting and you're not sure you're gonna survive, or you don't have enough ultimate and you need the resources, that kind of thing. But like, on top of that, like, you should never be using barrier, ever. Ever, 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 ever. Barrier is not something you want to use. You want to, and like I had said this earlier, if you have barrier slotted, you had better be in content where you know you're not going to need magma. If you're unsure of yourself, unsure of the group, unsure if you're going to stay alive, slot magma instead of barrier. But if you know what you're doing and you're confident, you're gonna want to put on barrier and help yourself passively and pop horns constantly for your group. Pretty simple there. So again, if you are unsure of yourself, put magma, but if you know what you're doing, put on barrier and help yourself out. Then, on top of this, every time you use an ultimate, you're gonna regen so much. I'll show you guys. Hold on. Okay, get away from these guys and I'll show you something. If you look at the resources right now, just as an example, we're out of combat. So if you look at resources right now, here after one Warhorn, we're at almost 50% stamina, and we shot up to almost 60-80% magicka. You should be popping Warhorns in rotation with your group to optimize your damage. But if you are not intending to use Warhorn and you're trying to stay alive as best you can, I suggest, unless it's a heavy damage phase when you know you're going to take a lot of damage and not survive it type thing, if you're trying to be extra safe, you should use the magma. Like, don't be afraid to pop that magma. But at the same time, you can be much smarter with your ulti. Like, if you have full resources, you should not be popping a magma. If you have full resources and you know you're gonna go into a one-shot almost mechanic, then go ahead and pop a magma. But if you have decent amount of resources, there's no reason for you to waste the return you get on an ultimate just because you're scared and although you have a bunch of resources. If you have a bunch of resources, you can sustain yourself for a bit longer. But if you are dying and you are low and you have nothing left, go ahead and pop that ulti on cooldown. But if you have full resources, you're not gonna get anything in return. Like if you have a relatively full bar, which I'll show you in a second. If you have a relatively full resource bar, you're not gonna help yourself by using an ultimate. Especially if you're trying to use a selfish ultimate. So if you look at it right now, here we are with about 50 something. That's fine. If you recall previously with Warhorn, we gained about 50% of our stam pool and about 80% of our magicka pool. Pretty simple, right? But if you were to panic right now and just swap to your back bar and use a horn, you are going to get the 55%, I mean the 50% stamina. Sure, you're going to get that 50% stamina, but if you look at your magicka bar, you're only going to get 10% of your magicka bar right now. And this is just spamming. If you are gonna pop an ultimate for resources, I would make sure to run your resources low so that you don't waste the resource return, per se. So like here we are and we're gonna Warhorn, and we're almost at full. Pretty simple. If you have a full magicka bar on your horn, you're gonna miss out on, I don't know how many hardened armors that was, but you're gonna miss out on resources if you don't time your ultimate correctly. But again, at the same time, if you are in a situation where you're afraid you're gonna die, and you're probably going to die, or you're panicking, go ahead and use the magma. But if you do so, try and be smart with it, if possible. There will be times where you're just gonna be like, you got nothing left and it's just gonna be hectic. Use the magma, try and sustain yourself. That's about it for the details. Next thing we're gonna go over is bar setup and closing statements for the build.